In today's episode, we're looking at 5 pastors eaten alive by snakes. From a believer whose faith proved fatal to a preacher who survived 116 bites before his luck ran out. But first, we start in Florida, where the founder of serpent handling met his match. It was July 24, 1955, in the sweltering heat of rural Alpha, Florida, where Spanish moss draped ancient oak trees like funeral shrouds over the abandoned blacksmith shop. The ramshackle building, with its rusted tin roof and weathered wooden walls, had been transformed into an unlikely sanctuary for dozens of faithful believers who gathered on this scorching Sunday afternoon. Among the congregation sat families from nearby farming communities, their faces etched with the hardships of Depression-era life, seeking spiritual solace in the remote Calhoun County wilderness. The air hung thick with humidity and anticipation as cicadas droned their endless summer chorus outside the makeshift church. At the center of this makeshift church stood George Went Hensley, a weathered 74-year-old preacher whose piercing eyes and commanding presence had captivated audiences across the American South for over 4 decades. Born in the Appalachian Mountains, Hensley had dedicated his life to spreading what he believed was the literal interpretation of Mark 16:18, which spoke of believers taking up serpents without harm. His calloused hands bore the scars of countless encounters with venomous snakes, a testament to a ministry that had made him both revered and reviled throughout the region. For 3 weeks, he had conducted services in this isolated Florida location without his signature serpents, but today would be different. Local residents had whispered warnings about the dangerous wildlife inhabiting the surrounding swamplands, yet Hensley remained undeterred in his mission to demonstrate divine protection through serpent handling. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake represents one of North America's most formidable predators, capable of growing up to 8 feet in length and possessing fangs that can inject up to 400 milligrams of potent hemotoxic venom. These apex predators inhabit the southeastern United States, preferring dense woodlands and swamplands where they can ambush unsuspecting prey. Their distinctive diamond-patterned scales provide perfect camouflage among fallen leaves, while their heat-sensing pits detect warm-blooded creatures from considerable distances. Adult specimens can weigh up to 10 pounds, with muscular bodies capable of striking at speeds exceeding 10 feet per second. As Hensley delivered his passionate sermon about faith conquering fear, he reached into a metal lard can and withdrew a massive 5-foot rattlesnake, its thick body coiling around his weathered forearms. The serpent's triangular head swayed hypnotically as Hensley wrapped it around his neck, the creature's muscular form pressing against his jugular vein. For several minutes, the preacher moved through the congregation, the snake's forked tongue flicking rapidly as it sensed the elevated heart rates of terrified onlookers. Children pressed closer to their parents, while adults held their breath, mesmerized by the deadly dance unfolding before them. When Hensley returned to place the serpent back into its container, the rattlesnake struck with lightning speed. Its curved fangs penetrated deep into his right wrist, the hollow teeth functioning like hypodermic needles as they pumped hemotoxic venom directly into his bloodstream. The snake's jaw muscles contracted rhythmically, ensuring maximum venom delivery before releasing its grip. Within minutes, Hensley's arm began swelling dramatically as the cytotoxic compounds destroyed cellular tissue and blood vessels. His skin turned a mottled purple-black as internal hemorrhaging spread throughout his circulatory system. The venom's anticoagulant properties prevented blood clotting while simultaneously attacking his cardiovascular system. Hensley's blood pressure plummeted as capillaries throughout his body began rupturing. He experienced severe abdominal cramping as the toxins triggered massive internal bleeding. His breathing became labored as fluid accumulated in his lungs, while his kidneys began shutting down from the systemic assault. Despite offers of medical assistance from concerned congregants and local authorities, Hensley refused all treatment, maintaining his belief that divine intervention would preserve him. Over the next 18 hours, the venom continued its relentless destruction of his organ systems. His wife Sally remained by his side as his condition deteriorated rapidly. By dawn on July 25th, Hensley had lost consciousness as his body succumbed to complete cardiovascular collapse and respiratory failure. Local authorities conducted a brief investigation into the circumstances surrounding Hensley's death, with Calhoun County Judge Hannah Gaskin ultimately ruling it a suicide. The incident drew national media attention, sparking renewed debates about religious freedom and public safety. Hensley's followers gathered for his funeral 2 days later, where a country music band played hymns as mourners from across the South paid their respects to the man who had founded their controversial movement. His death certificate listed snakebite as the official cause, marking the end of a remarkable yet tragic life. George Hensley's death marked a tragic end to the founder of America's most dangerous religious practice. For Melinda Brown, it wasn't just faith driving his serpent handling, but a deadly legacy that would soon claim him too. It was August 8, 1995, in the humid evening air of Middlesboro, Kentucky, where the faithful had gathered in a small, white-painted church nestled among the rolling hills of Bell County. The modest building, with its simple wooden cross and hand-carved pews, sat at the edge of town where Appalachian foothills met coal mining country. Outside, the sounds of summer insects filled the warm night as approximately 40 congregation members filled the sanctuary, their voices rising in traditional hymns that echoed through the surrounding hollers. Among the worshipers sat Melinda Brown, a 28-year-old mother of 5 whose gentle demeanor masked an unwavering commitment to her controversial faith. Born January 22, 1967, Melinda had grown up in the snake-handling tradition, watching her elders demonstrate their beliefs through the handling of venomous serpents during religious ceremonies. Her husband, John Wayne Brown, served as one of the church's most respected ministers, and together they had raised their children within this dangerous practice that interpreted biblical scripture literally. Tonight's service held special significance as visiting preachers from neighboring states had arrived to participate in a regional gathering of snake-handling believers. The evening promised to be a powerful demonstration of faith, with multiple serpents brought specifically for the ceremony that would soon claim an unexpected victim. Venomous snakes native to Kentucky represent some of North America's most dangerous reptilian predators, with species like the timber rattlesnake and copperhead inhabiting the state's diverse ecosystems. These serpents possess sophisticated venom delivery systems consisting of hollow fangs connected to venom glands that can inject potent cocktails of toxins into their victims. The hemotoxic venoms common to these species contain cytotoxins that destroy cellular tissue, anticoagulants that prevent blood clotting, and vasodilators that cause dangerous drops in blood pressure. Adult specimens can deliver between 50 to 200 milligrams of venom per bite, with even smaller doses proving potentially fatal without immediate medical intervention. Their heat-sensing capabilities allow them to detect warm-blooded prey with remarkable precision, while their muscular bodies can strike at speeds exceeding 8 feet per second. As the evening service reached its climactic moment, Melinda approached the wooden box containing the church's collection of venomous serpents. She carefully lifted a medium-sized snake, its scales glistening under the fluorescent lights as she held it gently in her hands. The congregation watched in reverent silence as she participated in the sacred ritual that had defined her faith since childhood. For several minutes, she moved gracefully through the aisles, the serpent remaining calm in her experienced grasp. Without warning, the snake struck with lightning speed, its fangs penetrating deep into her right palm. The hollow teeth functioned like hypodermic needles, injecting a substantial dose of hemotoxic venom directly into the network of blood vessels running through her hand. The serpent's jaw muscles contracted for several seconds, ensuring maximum venom delivery before she managed to place it back into its container. Within minutes, her palm began swelling dramatically as the cytotoxic compounds initiated their assault on her cellular tissue. The venom spread rapidly through her lymphatic system and bloodstream, causing immediate tissue destruction at the bite site. Her hand turned deep purple as capillaries ruptured beneath the skin, while the anticoagulant properties prevented normal blood clotting mechanisms. The swelling extended up her arm as the toxins attacked her circulatory system, causing dangerous vasodilation and fluid loss from damaged blood vessels. Her blood pressure dropped precipitously as the venom triggered systemic cardiovascular effects. Over the following hours, the hemolytic components began destroying her red blood cells, while cytotoxins caused massive tissue necrosis throughout her arm. Her breathing became increasingly labored as the venom affected her respiratory system, causing fluid accumulation in her lungs. Despite the visible deterioration of her condition and urgent pleas from family members, Melinda refused all medical assistance, maintaining her belief that prayer and divine intervention would heal her wounds. The venom continued its relentless destruction of her organ systems over the next 48 hours. Her kidneys began failing as toxins overwhelmed her body's filtration systems, while her cardiovascular system struggled to maintain adequate circulation. By the second day, she had developed severe systemic toxicity as the venom's effects cascaded throughout her body. Her condition deteriorated rapidly until her organs could no longer function, and she succumbed to complete cardiovascular collapse and respiratory failure. Local authorities conducted a routine investigation into the circumstances surrounding Melinda's death, ultimately ruling it accidental. The incident drew regional media attention, highlighting the ongoing practice of snake handling in Appalachian religious communities. Her funeral attracted hundreds of mourners from across Kentucky and neighboring states. She was laid to rest in the Holiness Church of God in Jesus Name Cemetery in Tennessee, leaving behind 5 young children and a husband who would continue the deadly tradition. Melinda Brown's death marked a tragic loss for Kentucky's snake handling community. For John Wayne Brown Jr., it wasn't just faith driving him to serpent handling, but a deadly encounter that claimed his fate. It was October 3rd, 1998, in the humid evening air of rural Alabama, where the congregation of a small Pentecostal church had gathered for their weekly service in a modest wooden building surrounded by towering pine trees. The structure, with its peeling white paint and simple cross mounted above the entrance, sat isolated among the rolling hills of the deep south, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that wound through dense forest. Inside, kerosene lamps cast flickering shadows across the walls as approximately 30 believers filled the wooden pews, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of faith and anticipation. At the pulpit stood John Wayne Brown Jr., a 34-year-old preacher whose weathered hands and intense gaze reflected years of unwavering devotion to his controversial calling. Known affectionately as Punkin to his congregation, Brown had inherited both his ministry and his dangerous practices from generations of snake-handling preachers who believed in the literal interpretation of biblical scripture. 3 years earlier, tragedy had struck his family when his wife Melinda died from a venomous snake bite during a similar religious ceremony, leaving him to raise their 5 children alone. Despite this devastating loss, Brown's faith remained unshaken, and he continued to demonstrate his beliefs through the handling of deadly serpents. Tonight's service carried special significance, as members from neighboring communities had traveled considerable distances to witness his ministry, drawn by his reputation as one of Alabama's most fearless snake handlers. The timber rattlesnake stands as one of North America's most dangerous venomous serpents, capable of reaching lengths up to 6 feet and possessing fangs that can deliver up to 150 milligrams of potent hemotoxic venom. These formidable predators inhabit the southeastern United States, preferring dense forests and rocky outcroppings, where they can remain concealed while hunting small mammals and birds. Their distinctive segmented rattle serves as both a warning system and an intimidation device, producing a characteristic buzzing sound when vibrated rapidly. The species possesses heat-sensing pits that detect infrared radiation from warm-blooded prey, allowing them to strike with deadly precision even in complete darkness. Their venom contains powerful cytotoxins that destroy tissue and anticoagulants that prevent blood clotting, making their bite potentially fatal without immediate medical intervention. As Brown delivered his passionate sermon about divine protection and unwavering faith, he reached into a wooden box beside the pulpit and carefully extracted a 4-foot timber rattlesnake, its thick body coiling defensively around his forearms. The serpent's distinctive brown and yellow diamond patterns seemed to shimmer in the lamplight as its segmented tail began rattling ominously. Brown held the creature aloft, allowing the congregation to witness his demonstration of biblical faith as the snake's forked tongue flicked rapidly, sensing the elevated stress hormones permeating the humid air. Without warning, the rattlesnake struck with explosive force, its fangs penetrating deep into Brown's right index finger. The hollow teeth functioned like precision syringes, injecting a massive dose of hemotoxic venom directly into his bloodstream through the digital arteries. The snake's jaw muscles contracted rhythmically for several seconds, ensuring maximum venom delivery before releasing its grip. Brown continued holding the serpent for another 10 minutes, his finger already beginning to swell as the cytotoxic compounds initiated their destructive assault on his cellular tissue. The venom spread rapidly through his circulatory system, causing immediate vasodilation and increased capillary permeability. His finger turned deep purple as blood vessels ruptured beneath the skin, while the anticoagulant properties prevented normal clotting mechanisms. Within minutes, the swelling extended up his arm as the toxins attacked his cardiovascular system. His blood pressure dropped precipitously as the venom triggered systemic vasodilation and fluid loss from damaged blood vessels. The hemolytic components began destroying red blood cells, while the cytotoxins caused massive tissue necrosis throughout his hand and forearm. Brown's breathing became increasingly labored as the venom affected his respiratory system, causing fluid accumulation in his lungs. His heart rate became erratic as the toxins disrupted normal cardiac function, leading to dangerous arrhythmias. Despite the visible deterioration of his condition and urgent pleas from congregation members, Brown refused all offers of medical assistance, maintaining his belief that divine intervention would preserve his life. Within 10 minutes of the initial bite, his cardiovascular system collapsed completely, and he lost consciousness as his body succumbed to massive organ failure and respiratory arrest. Local emergency responders arrived at the scene, but were unable to revive Brown despite their efforts. The incident prompted a brief investigation by county authorities, who ultimately ruled the death accidental. News of Brown's passing spread quickly through Alabama's tight-knit snake-handling community, sparking renewed debates about religious freedom and public safety. His funeral drew hundreds of mourners from across the Southeast, many of whom continued to practice the same dangerous rituals that had claimed his life. John Wayne Brown's death represented another tragic chapter in America's most dangerous religious practice. For Charles Prince, it wasn't just religious conviction driving his serpent handling, but a dangerous double life that would soon catch up with him. It was August 18th, 1985, in the sweltering heat of rural Canton, North Carolina, where the faithful had gathered in a modest church building surrounded by the dense forests of Haywood County. The simple wooden structure sat along Newfound Road among towering oak trees that provided little relief from the oppressive summer humidity. Inside, approximately 50 congregation members filled the wooden pews as they participated in an evening service that would soon turn deadly. At the center of this gathering stood Charles Prince, a complex figure who lived a double life that few in his congregation fully understood. By day, Prince operated a bait shop along the winding mountain roads of Canton, selling fishing supplies to local anglers and tourists exploring the pristine streams of western North Carolina. His weathered hands also served a more dangerous purpose during evening hours, when he transformed into a passionate Pentecostal preacher. Prince had embraced snake handling as a literal interpretation of Mark 16:17-18, believing that true believers could take up serpents without harm. His ministry extended beyond the church walls as he traveled throughout the impoverished communities of Appalachia, offering healing services to those who had little else. However, his dual existence had recently attracted unwanted attention from local authorities, particularly Sheriff C. Jack Arrington, who had confiscated snakes from Prince's bait shop to test them for venom. Despite this legal pressure, Prince remained defiant, believing that his calling required him to practice his faith openly. Venomous snakes native to the North Carolina mountains represent some of the region's most formidable predators, with species like timber rattlesnakes and copperheads thriving in the dense forests of the Appalachian Range. These serpents have evolved sophisticated venom delivery systems consisting of hollow, retractable fangs connected to venom glands capable of producing potent cocktails of hemotoxic and cytotoxic compounds. The venoms contain powerful enzymes that break down cellular tissue, anticoagulants that prevent blood clotting, and vasodilators that cause dangerous drops in blood pressure. Adult specimens can inject between 75 to 300 milligrams of venom per bite, depending on the species and size. Their muscular bodies enable lightning-fast strikes that can cover distances up to 2/3 of their body length in milliseconds. As Prince delivered his passionate sermon about divine protection, he reached into a wooden crate beside the pulpit and carefully extracted a large, venomous snake, its muscular body coiling defensively around his forearms. The serpent's distinctive patterns seemed to shimmer under the harsh fluorescent lights as its forked tongue flicked rapidly, sensing the elevated stress hormones permeating the humid church air. Prince held the creature aloft, allowing the congregation to witness his demonstration of biblical faith. Without warning, the snake struck with explosive force, its fangs penetrating deep into Prince's neck just below his jawline. The hollow teeth functioned like precision syringes, injecting a massive dose of hemotoxic venom directly into the carotid artery and surrounding tissue. The serpent's jaw muscles contracted rhythmically for several seconds, ensuring maximum venom delivery before Prince managed to remove it. The bite location proved particularly dangerous as the venom entered his major blood vessels almost immediately. The toxins spread rapidly through his circulatory system, causing immediate vasodilation throughout his neck and head. The bite site began swelling dramatically as blood vessels ruptured beneath the skin, creating a dark purple discoloration that spread outward from the puncture wounds. The anticoagulant properties prevented normal clotting mechanisms, causing continuous bleeding from the fang marks and internal hemorrhaging in the surrounding tissue. Within minutes, the cytotoxic compounds began destroying cellular tissue in his neck, while the hemolytic components attacked his red blood cells. His blood pressure dropped precipitously as the venom triggered systemic cardiovascular effects. The swelling in his neck began compressing his airway, making breathing increasingly difficult as his respiratory system struggled to function normally. Prince's condition deteriorated rapidly as the venom overwhelmed his body's natural defenses. His heart rate became erratic as the toxins disrupted normal cardiac function, leading to dangerous arrhythmias. The massive tissue damage in his neck continued expanding, while his kidneys began failing as they attempted to filter the overwhelming toxins. Despite the visible severity of his condition, Prince refused all offers of medical assistance, maintaining his belief that divine intervention would preserve his life. The venom's relentless assault continued for several hours until his cardiovascular system could no longer maintain adequate function. His breathing became increasingly labored before stopping completely as respiratory failure set in. Prince lost consciousness and succumbed to complete organ failure as his body was overwhelmed by the massive dose of venom delivered to such a critical location. Local authorities conducted an investigation into Prince's death, with county officials ultimately ruling it accidental. The incident drew regional media attention, particularly given his recent legal troubles with law enforcement. His funeral attracted mourners from across the snake-handling community. Charles Prince's death represented another casualty in America's most dangerous religious practice. For Dewey Chafin, it wasn't just decades of experience with serpents, but surviving over 100 bites that would finally meet its match. It was September 12, 1989, in the humid evening air of rural Appalachia, where the Church of Lord Jesus sat nestled among the rolling hills and dense forests that had sheltered snake-handling congregations for generations. The modest white-painted building served a community of believers who viewed their dangerous practices as sacred demonstrations of biblical faith. Outside, the sounds of late summer insects filled the warm night as approximately 60 congregation members gathered for what would become one of the most tragic services in the church's history. At the center of this gathering stood Dewey Chafin, a legendary figure within the snake-handling community whose reputation for surviving venomous encounters had reached mythical proportions. For 35 years, Chafin had been handling deadly serpents during religious ceremonies, accumulating an extraordinary record of 116 documented snake bites without ever seeking medical treatment. His weathered hands bore the scars of countless encounters with timber rattlesnakes, copperheads, and other venomous species that called the Appalachian Mountains home. Chafin's philosophy centered on absolute faith in divine protection, believing that true believers could handle serpents without harm as long as their spiritual conviction remained pure. His congregation viewed him as a living testament to the power of faith, a man who had cheated death more times than seemed humanly possible. Tonight's service held special significance as visiting ministers from neighboring states had arrived to witness Chafin's legendary serpent-handling abilities. The timber rattlesnake represents one of North America's most dangerous venomous serpents, capable of reaching lengths up to 6 feet and possessing fangs that can deliver up to 400 milligrams of potent hemotoxic venom. These formidable predators inhabit the dense forests and rocky outcroppings of the eastern United States, preferring mountainous terrain where they can remain concealed while hunting small mammals and birds. Their distinctive segmented rattle serves as both a warning system and an intimidation device, producing a characteristic buzzing sound when vibrated rapidly. The species possesses heat-sensing pits that detect infrared radiation from warm-blooded prey, allowing them to strike with deadly precision. Their venom contains cytotoxins that destroy cellular tissue, anticoagulants that prevent blood clotting, and vasodilators that cause dangerous drops in blood pressure. As Chafin delivered his passionate sermon about unwavering faith, he approached the wooden boxes containing the church's collection of venomous serpents. With practiced confidence born from decades of experience, he reached into the largest container and withdrew a massive 5-foot timber rattlesnake, its thick, muscular body immediately coiling around his forearms. The serpent's distinctive brown and yellow diamond patterns seemed to pulse under the harsh fluorescent lights as its segmented tail began rattling ominously. Without warning, the rattlesnake struck with explosive force, its curved fangs penetrating deep into Chafin's right forearm, near the elbow. The hollow teeth functioned like hypodermic needles, injecting a massive dose of hemotoxic venom directly into the network of blood vessels and muscle tissue. The serpent's powerful jaw muscles contracted rhythmically for nearly 10 seconds, ensuring maximum venom delivery before Chafin managed to unwrap it from his arm. The venom spread with unprecedented speed through his circulatory system, causing immediate tissue destruction at the bite site. His forearm began swelling dramatically as the cytotoxic compounds initiated their assault on his cellular structure, while capillaries ruptured beneath the skin, creating a dark purple discoloration that spread rapidly up his arm. The anticoagulant properties prevented normal blood clotting mechanisms, causing continuous bleeding from the fang marks and extensive internal hemorrhaging. Within minutes, the hemolytic components began destroying his red blood cells, while the vasodilators triggered dangerous drops in blood pressure. His heart rate became increasingly erratic as the toxins disrupted normal cardiac function, leading to life-threatening arrhythmias. The massive tissue damage continued expanding throughout his arm as the cytotoxins broke down cellular walls and destroyed blood vessels. Chafin's breathing became labored as the venom affected his respiratory system, causing fluid accumulation in his lungs. His kidneys began failing as they attempted to filter the overwhelming concentration of toxins from his bloodstream. Despite his legendary reputation for surviving snake bites, this encounter proved different, as the sheer volume of venom delivered overwhelmed his body's natural defenses. The systemic toxicity continued escalating as multiple organ systems began shutting down simultaneously. His blood pressure dropped to critically low levels, while his heart struggled to maintain adequate circulation. Within 2 hours of the initial bite, Chafin lost consciousness as his cardiovascular system collapsed completely. His breathing stopped shortly afterward as respiratory failure set in, and he succumbed to complete organ failure. Local authorities conducted a routine investigation into Chafin's death, ultimately ruling it accidental. The incident sent shockwaves through the snake handling community, as many had believed Chafin's survival record made him virtually invincible. His funeral drew hundreds of mourners from across the region. Dewey Chafin's death marked the end of an era for snake handling believers who had viewed him as proof of divine protection. Just when you think you've heard the most dangerous religious practices, click the next video for more deadly encounters that will leave you questioning faith itself.